Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is we're actually going to blend these colors a little bit that we put on in the last section and soften a few edges. So I'm taking things that are known as fan brushes, okay? That's a fan brush with hog's bristle, and that's a sable fan brush. I'm using this one. I'm actually going to blend the background into the cloth just to soften this edge because I want this to go back. So I want to blend this in a little bit just to soften this edge. Okay, and then I'm also going to soften the edge on the cast shadow here. I'm going to blend some of my my white in, and as you move away from the apple, the edge gets lighter and softer.
Dan, I assume there's not very much paint on your brush right now, is
There's
that right?
nothing on it. I'm actually taking a dry brush. I'm using a wet paint that's already there to blend it in. Remember we put the white back in? So I'm actually taking some of the white and blending it in right now. And I'm using the hog's bristle because it's stiffer right now. And this paint is pretty thick.
So what would you recommend for April, who's using
Sable. Okay, I'm taking the sable now. I'm going to use the sable to actually blend some of the green in. I'm just going to, and the reason is I don't want to blend it in a lot, I just want to blend it in very subtly, and that's why I'm using the sable. So I'm actually blending it into the red with the sable, and it's a very sort of delicate thing. I don't want to blend a lot in, I just want to blend a little bit in. Sable's much softer. You can see how it's just gradually blending it in. I'm not blending it in such degree that I'm really basically knocking the color down. I'm trying to keep the bright colors now. I'm not trying to basically dull them down or knock them down. I'm just trying to get some form on these apples. And I'm blending in the direction of the form. Okay? Finally, I'm going to go in and punch up the green a little bit more. Make a neoclip, a little cadmium yellow medium, a little cadmium green. Just going to punch this up a little bit more, a little brighter. Knock down my darks a little bit. Okay, one thing that I did that you guys didn't see me do while you were gone, I actually went in and I took a little burnt umber and I punched up the stem here on the apple, and I punched up the core a little bit, particularly the side that light's coming in from the left, so you'd have a cast shadow on the core on the right side. And actually there's a little cast shadow on the apple. Okay. And I'm going to use a little bit of this brown towards the dark side of the apple. Okay. Now the last thing I'm going to do is take another clean brush again. Is I'm going to go in, you notice there's some highlights on this. I'm going to go in and actually punch those highlights up. Now the trick of the highlight here is I'm actually going to take white and actually mix it in with a little phthalo green. I want the highlight to be a little bit on the cool side, and the idea is that I'm actually putting the highlight in with a little bit of the complement of the red that it's on. And that's, believe it or not, actually will make it appear brighter. So there's a highlight right here.
And this is scumbling.
Yeah, in a sense. I'm not actually blending it out though. I'm just putting it in. I'm going to blend it out in a second. And there's a little bit here where the light's hitting. And again, see there's a little bit of highlight on the other side of where the core is, where you have because the light is coming, giving me a shadow on the side that's facing the light. I'm getting a little bit of the light on the other side. I'm just dabbing it on right now. I'm not, and again, it's actually not white. It's white mixed with some phthalo yellow green. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back in with the sable. And I haven't cleaned it, I'm just going to sort of blend this highlight out just a little bit. I'm just going to drag it out a little bit. And again, I'm trying to go in the direction before. And I'm going to drag out the core shadow a little bit. Again, I'm knocking down some of the edges. I'm actually going to knock down, see how I'm blurring that edge on that back apple? I want to make that a little bit softer and not as hard as compared to this edge here, because I want this to come forward relative to that. So I'm just knocking it down a little bit. And blending it out a little bit more. Again, I want this to go around a little more, blend it out. And see, I can soften this edge here on the back side of the apple just by tapping it with the sable brush. Because again, I want that to go back, so that's why I'm sort of softening these edges, particularly on the back side of the apple. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back in and punch up the cast shadow directly under the apple. That is the darkest dark in the painting. I'm taking dioxazine purple again. I'm actually going to even make it a little bit darker with a little ultramarine blue. Okay. And again, I want to, the darkest dark is going to be right under that apple. And again, I want to punch up the core just a touch, make it a little bit darker right near the turning edge, right near where the light is, right where it turns away from the light. And I'll put a little bit on the dark side of the stem. Okay, I'll clean my brush in the background again.
That's dioxazine purple?
Yeah. Which is essentially ultramarine blue and Kronbacher red. It's like, I mean, I can go back and forth on this for days. I mean, so again, I could go in here now and blend this shadow out a little bit, blend this into the cast shadow so it softens it a little bit. And because this is turning here, I'm actually even softening that edge. And I can just go back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so I'm almost near a conclusion with this. The last thing I'm going to go in and do is I'm actually going to punch up the tablecloth a little bit more. And what I want to do is hit it with almost an opaque white. I want to actually really create some little bit of texture here, and then like lead you into the apple. And I mean, I'm really putting this stuff on thick. If I smear some of the dioxazine purple, and that's okay. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Just add something to the painting. But you see that little bit of texture actually.
Really.
You see how it pops the front of it out? It gives you more depth, and I'm leaving the back pretty untextured. And that's really, really thick paint. So I'm just kind of trying to lead you into the apples. And I'm going to harden this edge up a little bit right here. I'm going to sharpen that edge up just a bit, because that's my principal apple. Tap, 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 tap. I want this to be a little bit rougher here. Soften that a little bit. And maybe put a little more structure back here and here. Okay, back in, back and forth with the fan brush, go back in and just sort of blur this out a little again. Drag some of the background color into the cloth, just essentially soften it, because I want it to go back.
So it's almost like you're punching up and softening it at the same time.
And that's
Crazy.
I'm going to go back in. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and punch up the highlight one more time. And you don't have to use a big brush. I'm going to take, again, almost pure white, a little bit of phthalo green, and I'm going to make it really thick. Just where the light is really hitting, I'm just going to punch that one little spot up. And I'm almost using really thick paint here. Again, I need a little more phthalo green in that, and I'm just not quite, it's a little too white. And again, the idea is I want to punch the highlight up with the complement of the red. Again, we put a little more detail here. Again, this is where the light is hitting on the other side of the apple. And like I said, I can go back and forth on this for days if I want. I'm going to call it quits in about 2 seconds. And again, I could actually blend with my brush if I want a little bit here, because this is in an area that I don't want to be too bright. Okay, so you guys get the idea. Okay, cut it, Nick.